In the depths of time, long before cities rose from the earth and technology changed our world, our ancestors lived in caves and roamed vast wilderness. They were the cavemen, our early human relatives who faced nature with nothing but their wits and courage. But what did they sound like? How did they communicate? What language did they actually speak? Today, we journey back through thousands of years to discover the fascinating truth about caveman language. This is not just a story about sounds and words. This is a story about the beginning of human connection, the birth of communication, and a remarkable journey that led us to where we are today. Picture this. It's 50,000 years ago. The world looks nothing like it does now. Massive glaciers cover much of Europe and North America. Woolly mammoths roam the frozen plains. Saber-toothed cats prowl through dense forests. And somewhere in a cave, lit only by the flickering flames of a fire, a group of early humans huddle together. One of them points to the fire and makes a sound. The others understand. Another gestures toward the cave entrance and grunts. Everyone knows what this means. This is where human language began, not with complex sentences or written words, but with simple sounds, gestures, and the desperate need to communicate in order to survive. For many years, scientists and researchers have wondered about this mystery. How did our caveman ancestors actually speak? Did they have a language at all? Or did they just grunt and point like we see in old movies? The truth, as we're discovering, is far more amazing than any Hollywood film could ever show us. Let's start with what we know about these remarkable people. Cavemen, or early humans, lived during what we call the Paleolithic period, also known as the Old Stone Age. This was a time that lasted from about 2.6 million years ago until around 10,000 years ago. These weren't the hulking, mindless brutes that movies often portray. They were intelligent, resourceful people who survived in one of the harshest environments our planet has ever known. They made tools from stone and bone. They painted beautiful pictures on cave walls. They buried their dead with care and ceremony. They worked together in groups to hunt massive animals and gather food. All of this required communication. Complex communication. But what did this communication sound like? To understand caveman language, we must first understand that there wasn't just one type of caveman. Over millions of years, different groups of early humans lived in different parts of the world. There were Homo habilis, Homo erectus, Neanderthals, and eventually, modern humans like ourselves, called Homo sapiens. Each group had their own ways of communicating. The earliest forms of human communication probably didn't sound much like language as we know it today. Instead, our ancient ancestors likely used what scientists call proto-language. This was a combination of simple sounds, gestures, and facial expressions. Imagine trying to communicate without any words at all. You might point to your mouth when you're hungry, hold up your hands to show stop, or use your face to show happiness or fear. This is exactly what early humans did, but over thousands and thousands of years, these simple communications became more complex. A grunt might mean food. A different sound might mean danger. Hand gestures could indicate direction or quantity. Facial expressions showed emotions and intentions. But here's where the story becomes truly fascinating. Scientists have discovered that early humans, particularly Neanderthals, who lived alongside our direct ancestors, had the physical ability to speak much more complex languages than we once thought possible. For years, researchers believed that Neanderthals couldn't speak properly because their voice boxes were positioned differently than ours. But recent discoveries have changed everything we thought we knew. By studying ancient skulls and throat bones, scientists now believe that Neanderthals could produce a wide range of sounds, almost as many as modern humans can make. One of the most exciting discoveries came from a tiny bone called the hyoid bone, found in Neanderthal remains. This small bone in the throat is crucial for speech. The fact that Neanderthals had hyoid bones very similar to ours suggests they could speak in ways we never imagined. But what would their language have sounded like? This is where the detective work becomes really interesting. Scientists can't travel back in time to hear cavemen speak, but they can piece together clues like archaeologists digging for treasure. One clue comes from the tools that cavemen made. The more complex the tools, the more complex the language needed to teach others how to make them. Early stone tools were simple, basically just rocks with sharp edges. But as time went on, tools became incredibly sophisticated. Spear points, arrowheads, scrapers, and cutting tools required precise knowledge to create. This knowledge had to be passed down from parent to child, from experienced hunter to young apprentice. Think about trying to teach someone to make a sharp stone tool without using words. You could show them by doing it yourself, but explaining the why and how, which rocks work best, how to strike them at the right angle, what to do when things go wrong. All of this would require real language with real words. Cave paintings provide another fascinating clue. The beautiful artwork found in caves across Europe and other parts of the world shows that cavemen had complex thoughts and ideas. They could plan ahead, think symbolically, and share abstract concepts. You need sophisticated language to develop this kind of thinking. Some of the most famous cave paintings are found in Lascaux, France, and Altamira, Spain. These aren't just simple drawings. They're detailed, artistic representations of animals, hunting scenes, and even star patterns. Creating such art required cooperation between multiple people, planning over time, and the ability to share complex ideas about color, composition, and meaning. But perhaps the most compelling evidence for caveman language comes from their social behavior. Early humans lived in groups, cooperated in hunts, shared food, cared for the sick and elderly, and raised children together. All of these activities require communication that goes far beyond simple grunts and pointing. Imagine a group of cavemen planning to hunt a woolly mammoth. This wasn't a simple task. It required strategy, coordination, and precise timing. Someone had to scout the mammoth's location and report back to the group. Others had to prepare weapons and plan escape routes. During the hunt itself, hunters needed to communicate silently and quickly. All of this points to a language system that was sophisticated and effective. Recent research has even suggested that different groups of cavemen might have had different accents or dialects, just like people do today. Groups that lived in different regions developed slightly different ways of communicating, adapted to their specific environments and needs. For example, cavemen who lived in frozen northern regions might have had many different words for different types of ice and snow, similar to how some modern Arctic peoples have multiple words for snow. Groups that lived near rivers might have developed specific terms for different types of fish or water conditions. The emotional aspect of caveman language is perhaps the most touching part of this story. These weren't just practical communications about hunting and survival. Evidence suggests that cavemen had the capacity for emotional expression, storytelling, and even humor. Burial sites from tens of thousands of years ago show that cavemen mourned their dead. They buried people with tools, food, and flowers, suggesting they believed in some kind of afterlife or wanted to honor the deceased. This kind of behavior requires the ability to discuss abstract concepts like death, memory, and love. Some researchers believe that cavemen were among the first storytellers. Around campfires, they might have shared tales of successful hunts, dangerous encounters with predators, or legends about their ancestors. These stories would have served multiple purposes: entertainment, education, and bonding within the group. Children in caveman families learned by listening to their parents and elders. They had to learn not just how to make tools and find food, but also how to communicate effectively with others. This suggests that caveman language included ways to teach, encourage, and correct, all the elements we associate with nurturing families today. The development of caveman language wasn't smooth or quick. It took hundreds of thousands of years for human communication to evolve from simple gestures to complex speech. But every step of this journey was driven by the same forces that drive human communication today: the need to connect with others, share experiences, and work together to survive and thrive. One of the most remarkable things about studying caveman language is how it connects us to our ancestors. When you speak to your family, tell a story, or explain how to do something, you're using abilities that developed over millions of years. The words might be different, the grammar might be more complex, but the fundamental human need to communicate remains unchanged. Modern linguists have tried to reconstruct what some of the earliest human words might have sounded like. They've compared languages from around the world, looking for similarities that might trace back to our common ancestors. Some researchers believe that words like mama and papa, found in languages across the globe, might be among the oldest human words, dating back to our caveman ancestors. Other potentially ancient words include simple terms for body parts, basic foods, and immediate family members. These would have been the most important things to communicate about in early human society, so it makes sense that words for these concepts develop first. The sounds of caveman language were probably quite different from any modern language. Without formal grammar rules or writing systems to standardize pronunciation, caveman speech likely varied greatly from group to group. Some sounds might have been softer and more musical, while others could have been harsh and guttural, adapted to carry over long distances during hunts or to cut through wind and weather. As we piece together this ancient puzzle, we're learning that caveman language was not primitive or simple. It was the foundation upon which all human communication was built. Every language spoken today, English, Chinese, Arabic, Spanish, Hindi, all trace their roots back to the first words spoken by our caveman ancestors. The story of caveman language is also a story about human adaptability and creativity. Faced with the challenge of surviving in a dangerous world, our ancestors didn't just develop physical tools and hunting strategies. They developed the most important tool of all, language itself. This development wasn't accidental. It was driven by necessity, refined through generations, and passed down as the most precious inheritance from parent to child. Every generation built upon the communication achievements of the previous generation, slowly but steadily creating more complex and nuanced ways to express thoughts, feelings, and ideas. The legacy of caveman language lives on in every conversation we have today. When you comfort a crying child, your soothing tones echo the nurturing sounds that caveman parents used with their young. When you warn someone about danger, you're using communication patterns that helped our ancestors survive predator attacks and natural disasters. Even our modern technology reflects lessons learned from caveman communication. Video calls allow us to combine speech with facial expressions and gestures, just like our ancestors did. Social media enables us to share experiences and stories with our tribe, much like cavemen shared tales around the fire. Understanding caveman language also helps us appreciate the miracle of human communication. Every time you learn a new word, understand a complex idea, or connect emotionally with another person through language, you're participating in a process that began in caves 50,000 years ago. The research into caveman language continues today, with new discoveries constantly adding to our understanding. Advanced technology allows scientists to study ancient remains in ways that were impossible just a few decades ago. Computer modeling helps us understand how ancient vocal tracts might have produced sounds. Archaeological finds continue to reveal new evidence about how our ancestors lived and communicated. Recent discoveries have even suggested that some caveman groups might have used primitive forms of sign language alongside spoken communication. Hand gestures and body language were probably just as important as sounds in early human communication. This makes sense when you consider that hunters needed ways to communicate silently when tracking prey. The relationship between caveman language and modern human development is profound. The same brain structures that allowed our ancestors to develop language are the ones that enable us to think abstractly, plan for the future, and create art and technology. Language wasn't just a tool for communication. It was the foundation for everything that makes us uniquely human. Some researchers believe that the development of language was the key factor that allowed early humans to outcompete other human species, like Neanderthals. While Neanderthals were physically stronger and had larger brains, modern humans might have had superior communication abilities that gave them crucial advantages in cooperation and cultural development. The emotional impact of understanding caveman language extends beyond scientific curiosity. It connects us to our shared human heritage and reminds us that despite our different cultures, races, and nationalities, we all descend from the same small groups of early humans who first learned to speak around ancient campfires. This connection becomes even more meaningful when we consider the challenges our caveman ancestors faced. They lived through ice ages, volcanic eruptions, and constant threats from predators. Yet they not only survived but thrived, largely because they learned to communicate and cooperate with each other. The development of caveman language was also closely tied to the development of human culture and society. As communication became more sophisticated, early humans were able to develop more complex social structures, share knowledge more effectively, and build the foundations of civilization. Trade relationships between different caveman groups would have required sophisticated communication. Archaeological evidence shows that tools, materials, and ideas traveled great distances in prehistoric times, suggesting that different groups were able to communicate and cooperate even when they spoke different dialects or languages. The role of women in developing caveman language was probably crucial, though this aspect of history has only recently begun to receive the attention it deserves. Mothers teaching children to speak, women gathering and sharing information about plants and food sources, and female elders passing down knowledge through stories, all would have contributed to the evolution of human language. Children played a vital role too. Just as children today are often more flexible and creative with language than adults, young cavemen probably contributed to language development by experimenting with new sounds, creating new words, and finding innovative ways to express ideas. The seasonal nature of caveman life would have influenced their language development. Different times of year required different vocabulary. Words for migration patterns, seasonal foods, weather conditions, and survival strategies. This seasonal language would have been passed down through generations, creating rich vocabularies adapted to environmental cycles. Music and rhythm probably played important roles in early human language. The same brain regions that process language also process music, and many researchers believe that singing and rhythmic chanting might have been among the earliest forms of human vocal communication. Around campfires, cavemen might have combined stories with songs, creating the first human performances. The relationship between caveman language and tool-making represents one of the most fascinating connections in human development. The same cognitive abilities required for complex language, planning, sequential thinking, and abstract reasoning are also essential for making sophisticated tools. As language became more complex, tools became more advanced, and vice versa. Religious or spiritual communication might have been among the earliest abstract uses of caveman language. Evidence of ritual behavior in early human societies suggests that our ancestors were capable of discussing concepts beyond immediate survival needs, ideas about the meaning of life, death, and their place in the world. The development of personal names and identity concepts would have been crucial milestones in caveman language evolution. Being able to refer to specific individuals, remember their characteristics, and discuss their actions, even when they weren't present, would have required sophisticated linguistic abilities. Humor and play probably emerged early in human language development. The ability to use language in unexpected ways, create jokes, and engage in wordplay requires advanced cognitive abilities. Evidence suggests that even early humans engaged in playful behavior, which likely included playful use of communication. The preservation of knowledge through oral tradition began with our caveman ancestors. Important information about food sources, dangerous areas, seasonal patterns, and survival techniques had to be memorized and passed down through spoken language. The elders who served as living libraries were probably among the most respected members of caveman society. As we near the end of our journey through the world of caveman language, it's important to reflect on what this knowledge means for us today. Understanding how our ancestors communicated helps us appreciate the complexity and beauty of human language in all its modern forms. Every language spoken on Earth today carries within it echoes of those first words spoken around ancient fires. The grammar structures, the ways we form questions and statements, the methods we use to express emotions and abstract concepts. All of these trace their origins back to the communication innovations of our caveman ancestors. The story of caveman language is ultimately a story of human triumph. It's about our ancestors' refusal to be limited by the harsh realities of their world. Instead of accepting isolation and primitive existence, they developed the tools of communication that allowed them to build communities, share knowledge, and create the foundation for all human civilization. Today, as we communicate instantly with people around the world, speak dozens of different languages, and express ideas through writing, art, and technology, we're participating in a conversation that began 50,000 years ago in caves lit by firelight. The next time you speak with someone you love, tell a story, or learn something new through words, remember that you're using a gift passed down through countless generations from those brave cavemen who first discovered the magic of human language. Their voices have long since faded into silence, but their words live on in every sound we make, every thought we express, and every connection we forge through the miracle of human communication. This is the true legacy of caveman language, not just the ability to speak, but the power to connect, to share, to understand, and to become fully human.